Welcome everybody. Today we are going to do another one of our technology webinars, so we appreciate everybody that's in attendance. On the line today we have myself. I'm Jay Haskamp, and I'm the Support and Training Manager for Frontier Precision. And also as a panelist we have Steve Richter, and Steve is going to monitor the questions that may arise during the webinar. So if you have a question, you should see a questions window that you can put questions into. Otherwise, you can also use the chat window feature as well. And as I am kind of going through this presentation, Steve will monitor those. And the thought is we'll go through the whole presentation, and then at the end we will we'll address any of the questions that you guys may have. So today the session we're going to do is the new graphical interface for staking Trimble roads. Some of you may be using this already. This came out with a couple versions back, I think 2 versions back with Trimble Access. And the thought process behind today is to just kind of give you an overview of how this works and what's a little bit different about it versus the traditional method of staking roads that most of us are used to. So first, before we dive into this process, let's just take a little while to look at some background on roading in general. So first question is, in terms of the Trimble software, what is a road? So a road is basically a file that we use to stake out features such as roadways, sometimes used for trails, drainage ditches, things like that. Typically our road file consists of a centerline alignment, a centerline profile, and then some sort of template nodes or offsets of that centerline to define the surface of the road file that we're staking. And in Trimble Access, there's basically 3 road formats that we work with. I would say the most common one is the Trimble road file, which is the RXL extension. We also can work with land XML files, created by either TBC or other third-party software that has the XML extension. And some customers that we deal with are working in the Genio format, which is a CRD file. The next question would be, okay, that's great, but where do I get these road files? So just some different ways. There's obviously going to be some more than this, but these are kind of the common ones. First way is just keying the road in from a set of construction plans in Trimble Access. Maybe keying a file or a road file into TBC and then uploading it to the controller. Also uploading it via Trimble link from maybe an Autodesk or even a Bentley product. And then lastly, a land XML file that was maybe uploaded or copied to the controller from a third-party software. Other little note on the bottom is land XML files can be reviewed and edited and then saved as a Trimble road in Trimble Access. So we can, for an example, from a CAD package, we can export a land XML file that contains multiple roads, and then we can extract and review or edit one of the roads from that file and then save it as a Trimble road to stake out in our software. All right, so first let's kind of take a look at what we call now the traditional staking method. This is what most of us have used over the past number of years. Prior to Trimble Access version 2014.10, this was the method that we had. So our survey method, as you can see in the image here, was basically selected from a drop-down list right here. The station and offsets were also selected from a list, and then we could also define the construction offsets. But the big difference, I guess I would say, is nothing was visible. We were basically just looking at lists and numbers on a screen, and we didn't know necessarily what we had until we got into the actual staking process. The new graphical staking method, Trimble Access 2014.10 or later, defaults to this method. I just wanted to show this slide to show you that you can change between these 2 methods. by selecting the options key at the road selection screen. I'll show you this. I'll show you how to do this live in a few minutes here. But basically, when we start in the roads module and we pick survey roads and we get our road list right here, we can choose the options button on the bottom of the screen and switch between these two methods of staking. So if you prefer the traditional method, it's still available there for you to use. All right, so with this graphical staking, what are some perceived advantages of staking a road this way? I'll just kind of list these out here. So the survey method, or the staking method, is activated, is determined by what we select on the screen. So it provides a more intuitive workflow. You no longer have to pre-select it from a drop-down list. Basically, you're picking what you want to do with a graphical representation of your road right on the screen. You can select the position to stake by selecting it on the screen or by simply using the up, down, left, right arrow keys on the controller. You can graphically view the position you have selected to stake along with any construction offsets that you may have applied, either from the plan view or the cross-section view. If a cross slope or subgrade has been applied, you can see the resultant positions. And this also all happens before you even begin staking, so you can be confident that you're picking the right information before you initiate the staking process. And then when using the arrow keys on the controller to select a position and the OK key to measure and store a stake position, basically your staking at this point is just going to require the pressing of two keys. So let's take a look at some examples. This first example 1 here, we're going to just look at some basic surveying on a road using the new graphical interface. There's kind of 3 main things we're going to look at. The second example is going to be how we would stake, or I should say how we would define and stake a subgrade in the software. And then the third example is with the Trimble tablet users, some of the capabilities we have now of reviewing a road in 3D on the tablet. So in this first example, we're going to survey a road using the new graphical interface, and we're going to do 3 things. The first thing is we're going to measure a position relative to a road. So this is, position on road was maybe the term that most of you would know. Then we're going to measure a position relative to a string. Now, with this method, string might be kind of a new term for a lot of users. When we use the term string, string is basically another term for an offset or a template node. So for example, my shoulder PI might be an offset defined in my road. Now we're referring to it as a string, and you'll probably see why here once we get going. And then lastly, we're going to stake a station on a string, so a specific station. So I'm in roads on my controller, and I have a project open already and set up, so we can just kind of dive right into this. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose survey and survey roads, and then this brings us to our standard screen to pick our road from. Now I told you guys earlier in the PowerPoint we can switch back and forth between the 2 methods. So that is in this screen. Again, that's under survey, survey roads, and then down here on the bottom we can choose options. And under options we can choose between the graphically or the traditional menu selection. So we're going to roll with graphically here, and then I'm going to select my road, and now we get a I call it kind of a check-in screen or something before we start. So this is where we're just setting up our receiver type, making sure that our measure 2 is correct, our antenna height is correct, and then we have to define our station interval. So in this instance we're going to use 50 feet for our interval, and then we're going to hit next. Now notice this looks a lot different than what we're used to. We're used to seeing a bunch of menus and pull downs and numbers and letters on the screen, where now we're basically seeing I guess I call it like a map screen with our road. And on this road, as I zoom in, you can see all of our offsets or our template nodes are all connected as line strings, okay? Now, the first thing we're going to do is measure our position relative to a road. So notice right at the top of the screen, it's displayed that we're measuring relative to a road and our construction offset is 0. So if we want to define a construction offset in the screen, we can simply do that by tapping and holding and choosing Define Construction Offset. And here we can enter in, a vertical offset. Since we're not staking anything out, we're just measuring a position relative to this road. There's no horizontal offset to really apply here. All right, so let's say we want to just kind of get close to center line, so I can move my little guy over here, maybe right there, and I want to figure out where on the road I am. So I'm going to hit Start. And Start brings up basically my relative to road screen. So I get a couple of things. I get kind of a real-time position, or a real-time station and offset, which you can see on the bottom of the screen. And then I can also measure and store that position. So notice as I move down the alignment here, my numbers are updating on the bottom. I have my station, my offset, my cutter fill to the center line. And then I can also hit my little arrow button here, and I can see my northing and my easting coordinates as well. Now before I store this, I just want to show a couple more things. You can see that I have my design and my actual elevation on the top as I'm moving. And I can also choose this little cross-section button here, and I can see where I am relative to the cross-section of the road. So you can see this little red plus symbol here that's telling me I'm on center line. Notice as I move over, you can see how I start to get off of center line. I can switch back to my plan view, as I call it, and now I can measure. And when I measure, it just brings up our standard measurement screen. I'm going to measure this as a topo point. We're going to go through and we're going to store, and then I get my confirmed stake deltas. Now this might look a little bit different to maybe what some of you see. I have a setting in my survey style that tells me basically just the information that I want. I want my cutter fill, I want my station, I want my offset, and then I want any construction offsets listed. So I'm going to store this, and then I'll show you where we can change this. So if I want to change that setting, if I go to Options down here on the bottom, I basically get my stakeout settings, okay? And now I have my stake deltas format setting. If it's set to default, I'm going to get a whole bunch of information, probably a couple of pages worth. But I have mine set to road stake markup, which basically means if I'm surveying and staking a road, it's going to just display just the information I'm going to want to put on my stake, which was a little bit cleaner and a little bit better in terms of being able to see it. So that was the setting. All right, once you measure the screen, or you go to the measure screen, you measure the point, you store it, you're then returned back to the survey screen where you can continue the measurement process for other positions on the road. Otherwise, we can escape and we can turn back to this graphical, this kind of like our home screen for the road. All right, so that was measuring our position relative to road. Now the next step that we want to do would be to measure our position relative to a string. So again, as I said earlier, these offsets are all connected based on their codes or their offsets. These are all what we call strings. So if I select a string, notice how it makes it bold on my screen. It also lists the string at the top of the screen, and it also lists my construction horizontal and vertical offsets. I can change strings by using the left or right arrow keys on my keyboard, and I can tap and hold. I can define a construction offset here. Let's say maybe I want a horizontal offset of 15 feet. And if I hit enter and accept, now it'll give me a horizontal offset when I start measuring my position relative to my string. I'm going to take that out. And now I can hit start. And when I start moving on here, Notice again I get my station and my offset. It's telling me I need to go right 5.48 feet. So basically you can see this double circle is defined on the string. That's basically my position where I would be on the string if I were actually on it, or basically representing my stationing along the string. And then my go right is basically telling me I'm basically telling me I'm 5.5 feet offset or off of the string. And then I have my cut or fill. Again, similar to the other method, I can go to my cross-section view and I can see what I have going there. I can also, if I back up here, picking it on the screen, if we are kind of still liking this kind of drop-down menu way of doing it, I can also go to select string if I tap and hold, and I can hit my little right arrow and I can pick list, and I also can choose all of my string offsets based on this list. So let's say I wanted to do my shoulder instead of just picking it on the screen, I can also just pick it there, hit OK, and notice it jumps now to this other string. So I do have that option to do that as well. So now in here, if let's say I measure, and now I store my point, I get my vertical distance to the road, I get my station, and I get my code. Okay, so the code is going to be the code of the string that you have selected right here, which is the shoulder. Okay, so that's basically kind of two things. One is your position on the road relative to center line. This would be your position on the road relative to a specific offset or a specific string line. Okay. And now the last method in this first example I want to go through is now staking a station on a string. So before we were staking relative to a string, or I shouldn't say staking, but measuring a position relative to a string. Now we can pick a specific station on a string. So notice if I zoom out here a little bit, I have these little rows of these circles here. And these are our defined offsets. So these are every 50 feet. So we're going to see our specific stations defined by these circles by whatever our station interval is, as well as any PC, PT, any type of other important station locations that we want to stake. So if I want to stake relative to a station, I can pick that circle on the screen, and notice how it not only makes the center line bold, but it also gives me the double circle indicating that that is what I'm staking. And then on here I see my center line elevation, and again I can tap and hold and I can define a construction offset if I wish. And now it displays my construction offset. So this is actually the location I would navigate to. So you can see how that looks on the screen. So it's all, the point of this is it's all visual to kind of help guide you and tell you where you want to go. Also, if I tap and hold, notice I can edit my elevation if I need to. So my center line elevation at station 1 + 0, 0, I can modify that for whatever reason. And I can also choose my stations similar to the traditional menu, but right from the screen I can choose it from a list, just like we're used to seeing with the other method. I'm going to just remove this just to make it a little cleaner. And then the last thing I want to show you is I can also pick my different stations, or my different offsets along that station by using the left and right arrow keys. If I zoom out, I can also move up and down the road by doing my my forward and backward arrow keys. So let's go ahead and stake this position here. So I'm going to hit start. And now once I hit start, you can see I get my arrow direction screen that we're kind of used to, but notice the road line work is overlaid, or I should say underlaid behind it. I also have my go back, left, forward, right, whatever directions, my cut or fill. And I'm going to start moving over here. See if I can get a little closer here. I'll say that's pretty good. So I basically just guide myself to that position. Again, I have the cross-section view if I wish, which I can always go back to. Then I'm going to measure. And once that's ready, we can store. Notice I got my cutter fill, my station, and my offset. So that's, again, what I would write on my stake. If I had construction offsets, they would be listed here, I believe, in purple. And if I had a fill instead of a cut, I believe it would be green. So that's kind of color-coded also based on what you're, if it's cut or fill, if it's left or right, that type of thing. And I hit store. So now I've staked that position. Now if I want to move on to the next position, I simply just hit my arrow key. I hit enter to start staking. And I go back to my little position here, see if I can get somewhat close. Close enough. Measure. Store. Looks good. Store. And now I can move to the next one and so on. So you can see how I basically can stake this road out now by using my arrow keys and enter. All right, so before we move on to exercise 2, just a couple of additional points I want to make here. So what we did here was we kind of did our surveying or our road staking. We measured our position relative to a road. We measured our position relative to a specific string, and then we staked a specific station on a string. There's also a new feature in here called additional points, which I didn't show, but when you key in a road, actually let me just pull it up here. I can show you what I mean. If I escape out of here, and if I go into define, and I want to define this road that we're working on, I now have this additional points option at the bottom, which we didn't have before. And when I choose additional points, I can basically add some records in here by station station, offset, and elevation. Okay, so what I could do is if I had a station and offset of say like a manhole or a gate valve or something like that, I can key those in by station and offset, and they're actually then included or part of my road file. So when they're part of my road file, you can see on the screen here there's an extra little blue circle that's not on a specific string line. So they're already displayed graphically in our screen. We can choose them and we can stake out to them as part of our road staking process. If we look at the cross-section view with our additional points, they'll also display there, so you can kind of see based on the correct station if they appear. When we're in our cross-section view, I'll show you this in a minute here, but we can also use the left and right arrow keys to pick different points along our cross-section. And we can use the forward or the up and down keys to scroll through our stationing in the cross-section view as well. All right, so some other survey options that we kind of looked at here. You can still select a string or a station from the list, or key in a nominal station or an offset from the select string and select station option. So basically we can tap and hold, and we can either choose select string or station from a list, or we can key something in by hand from either of those options. There's also the activation of measure nearest string, where the delta offset navigation will automatically switch to display the values with respect to the closest string. So what that means is kind of what I call the traditional method is when we used nearest offset. That was one of the options from our staking methods. We had nearest offset. So what that basically means is as we walk along that cross section, it's going to give us our information to whatever string that we're closest to or whatever offset we're closest to. Additional points can be selected for stakeout from a list of available points, and the design elevations can be edited on the fly. Some other survey options. The tap and hold menu for a side slope point allows the cut and or fill slopes to be changed, and if required, the selection of a new hinge or string. So this is from the cross-section view. You can see here, if you select your match point and you tap and hold, you can modify your cut or your fill slope and even your hinge position right on the fly if you need to. Okay, so that was the first example. Let's look at the second example of staking a subgrade. So we're going to use this option where the cross-section represents the finished road surface, but we need to stake the points defining other surfaces in the road, so it's typically going to be a subgrade. So if we look at this image here, the points are computed by creating a temporary line, which is defined here as this dash number 3 line, which is parallel to and offset from a line between two strings in the cross-section. So basically we're selecting our finished surface here between these two string lines. We're telling it to offset, and we're creating this dashed line here. So the offset value displayed by 2 right here is defined by the user or by us. We key that in. And then the new points shown here as number 4 are computed wherever this temporary line intersects any existing lines in the cross-section. And then these points can then be selected on the screen for stakeout. So let's take a look at that example. Okay, if I go to Survey, Roads, and I'm going to go 50 feet. Okay, now I need to just zoom in here a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to select, and I should also point out, notice how, you see how these circles are open circles? Also notice that once we stake and store them, they turn to a filled-in circle. So it's also just another kind of a graphical representation to know what we have and haven't staked yet on this road. Let's say I select this station on the string, okay? And then I go into the cross-section view. Now what I can do is I can tap this line here, and when I tap this line, notice I can define, either change the cross slope, or I can define a subgrade. So just to make it easier to see for a subgrade, I'm just going to put, say, 0.2 in. And now you can see I have my line parallel to here, and I have where it intersects out here. Okay? So now I can tap this position, and you can see how it makes it a double circle. And now I can pick Start to start staking that position out. Let's see if I can get somewhat close here. Oops, I went too far that way. I'm using a emulator, so it's a little bit difficult. But let's just say that's pretty good. I'm 3/10 by 1/10. But then I can measure that. Oops. If I could spell today, called subgrade. Measure. Store. And then there's my information for my subgrade stake. And if I store that, this subgrade will apply to all subsequent stations. So notice if I pick my up arrow, if you look at the top of the screen here, notice it's holding it for all stations. Oops, went a little too far. Now when I went to the end, I lost it, but let me just pick it here again. 0.2, whoops. But it'll hold it for all stations. And notice once I hit station 1 plus 0, 0 in my cross-section view, these little circles are also filled in here, indicating that we already had staked those positions. Okay, so that is staking a subgrade. All right, our last example is reviewing a road in 3D. So this is only available on the tablets. So TSC3s and TSC2s don't have this capability, but if you have a Trimble tablet, you can also review and look at this road in 3D. So what this does is it enables you to rotate the road to view it from different sides. Viewing the road in 3D is useful for not only confirming the road definition visually, but for a Trimble road, but for visualizing the road relative to other definitions. So, you know, if we have a complex interchange or an intersection, or let's say we have a, you know, a four-lane highway with an overpass, and we can see, you know, the bridge alignment in 3D compared to the, you know, the on and off ramps and the roadway alignments and things like that. So, just kind of another way to view these roads. So let's take a look. And to look at these roads in 3D, it's a little bit different. It's not going into the survey part of the roads module. It's actually under define. So if I choose define and I have my specific road that we're working on, I can hit hold on here. First, I think I need to end my survey. Oops. Pick my road, and then when I choose my road, I'm back into where we looked at the additional points, and I can kind of make edits to my road. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit review on the bottom, and when I hit review, it's going to bring me into the to the map screen. And you can see here I have my road alignment. So notice when I zoom in, I can see kind of these string lines, similar to what, you know, we're seeing in the stakeout options. But if I choose this little 3D orbit button here, I can actually look at this road in 3 dimensions, and I can rotate this, and notice I can see kind of the definition of my road, and I can also see where my proposed or potential cut and fill slopes are going to be. Okay. The other things I can kind of do here is notice this is selected right here at 0 + 0, 0. If I use my arrow keys, I can also move my little blue dot down this down the road, and I can go left or right, and I can see all of my road information. So I got my station, my string name, my offset, my northing, easting, and elevation coordinates. So it's just kind of a nice little tool to help define your roads. And then I can also go into layers, and I can add other roadways that are in this area. And notice when I do that, I can see, oops, let me back out. I can see my road kind of relative to other roads. So I can kind of zoom in here, and if I had, you know, I don't have anything defined, but if I had, you know, a nice intersection here, I could see how that all plays out. And I can actually pick points on these subsequent roads too, and I can look at the station and the offsets of those specific roads as well. So the cool thing about this is, since it's in the map screen, I can actually load any of these layers and see any additional information in that work area. Okay. If I switch to cross-section view, I can look through these roads in the cross-section view as well. And I can jump to a specific station and show a specific offset from down on the bottom of the screen. And then lastly, what I can do is, if I pick this up arrow here, I have this 3D drive button. So the 3D drive actually allows me to, for lack of a better term, just drive down this road on my tablet and see how everything looks. Now, just to show maybe a little bit better example, I'm going to change to a different road here. There we go. This is a little bit longer road with a couple little curves in it. So I'm going to hit my up arrow, and I'm going to do a 3D drive view, and basically I can just I can hit play, and it can drive right down this road, and I can check maybe, you know, if I had some super elevations or things like that, I can check that information there. Or I can actually pause it, and I can use my, back and forward arrow keys to go to, kind of by hand scroll through the road. And I believe if I turn these back on, you can see I have a road here and a road here. Then I can see my intersections. You can see right here is the other road right there. So if I had intersections or bridges or anything like that, I can see all of this in 3D and just make sure it all looks good as I go down and define this this particular road. Okay, so that is that's the rundown of our graphical road staking in Trimble Access. So hopefully some of you can kind of see maybe the advantages of using that way. Just one thing to keep in mind is that what we call the traditional way, or the kind of the pull down menu pick from a list way, is still available. But you can also access that information by using the tap and hold menu in the stakeout screen. So it's there for you to use. Again, you need to have version 2014.10 or later in order to use this this feature. And if you have any additional questions after this this webinar, just make sure that that you get in touch with us. With that said, let's take a look. It looks like we do have a question on there. It says, when you edit a station elevation, does it change the keyed-in string elevation or just the stakeout? From what I understand, that keys just the stakeout. It doesn't modify the actual road alignment itself or the actual string line itself. It's just kind of a one-time entry. Okay. And Steve, if you're on the line, do you see any other questions anywhere else? I'm not. Oh, there's a question that says, what is the newest? Yeah, the newest version of Access that is available. Currently, it's 2014.20. I believe that came out, I think, in November, beginning of November. 2014.20 is the latest version. The next question is, can you edit a string visually? I think I understand what you're asking, and I don't believe so. I think to edit a string, it's either got to be through the road, define in the road. When you go into defining a road and maybe modifying an offset, that part of it still looks the same as what we're used to. You can still go into the review portion of it and see the string lines and everything under the review, but in terms of modifying it, it's still going to be kind of the way it always has been, unless you do it on the fly.
I just want to note too that this process is definitely recommended for when using a 3D road and cross sections. If you're not using a 3D road or cross sections for stakeout, then the traditional method is probably still going to be used, because you basically, without those cross sections, you don't have strings.
Okay, question is, can you define a subgrade not parallel to a finished surface? Using the method that I showed up there, I would say no. That's not to say there probably isn't a way around it by maybe modifying a cross slope and then defining a subgrade. You could probably do it that way, but simply just picking a line to define a subgrade, it's always going to be parallel. So yeah, my thought first would be, let's say, like, where I picked that driving surface or the paved surface, you could probably modify that cross slope first to be what you want your subgrade to be, and then select your subgrade offset. But I guess my answer to that would be kind of. Okay. Well, it looks like that might be all the questions. The last thing I just wanted to put up on the screen here. Oh, there is another question. So I guess the next one's more of a maybe a technical support type question. Maybe yeah, I think I have seen this in the past. What we'll probably have to do, Jess, is maybe take that offline and talk about that and maybe see if we can look at some examples. But I have seen that in the past, yes. I think we have your email address. I'll maybe just reach out to you via email. We'll discuss that. Okay, up on the screen, I just wanted to show this, basically showing some of the other webinars that we have coming up. Today we did number 2 here, the graphical staking. We do have another one coming up on February 23rd, which is the using the Trimble V10 imaging rover, just some different applications that we're finding people are having success with using this system and some of the workflows that go with those. As well as March 9th, we'll be doing a webinar about the recent FAA exemption for the Trimble UX5 for the unmanned aerial systems, UAS, and kind of talk about what that means to us. And then on Monday, April 6th, we're going to be doing a webinar on Trimble VRS systems and how they work, what they're used for, best practices for getting the most out of them, and things like that.
And as a reminder, that this session was recorded. It will be available for playback in the next couple of days. If you have not signed up for our survey blog, you can do that at www.fpisurvey.com, and you'll receive a notification when it's available. Otherwise, you can just go to that site, fpisurvey.com. It's also at the bottom of Jay's presentation right now, and look for that playback. Like I said, it should be available in the next couple of days.
Yep. So yeah, we'll have the recording posted there, and then there was also a question about the PowerPoint. We will probably put a PDF version of the PowerPoint, link that up there as well. Okay, well, looks like we've covered all the questions. Again, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again on the 23rd for the next webinar.